Out here, in the vast South Australian outback, people don't just disappear. There are no crowds, no traffic, no strangers passing through. Just wide open land, endless silence, and a handful of families who've lived here for generations. Yet somehow, in this place where every sound carries, where every movement leaves a mark, a 4-year-old boy vanished without a trace. On September 27th, little Gus Lamont was playing in a mound of sand just metres from his family's homestead. The kind of spot where you can see a child from almost every angle. 30 minutes later, he was gone. No footprints leading away, no calls for help, no sign of a struggle. And what followed has become one of the most confounding mysteries Australia has seen in years. Police, SES, the ADF, drones, helicopters, horses, nothing. Not one shred of clothing. Not one confirmed footprint beyond the homestead. Not one credible sighting. Every time investigators think they've found a direction, the case folds back into silence. Tonight we're breaking down why. Why this landscape, these early decisions, and the unique conditions of this case have created a perfect storm of confusion. Why seasoned officers, survival experts, and search coordinators all admit this case should have made more sense by now. Before we begin, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Your engagement doesn't just help the channel, it keeps attention on Gus, and that attention matters. September 27th began like any other day at Oak Park Station, a remote, generations-old sheep property near Yunta. A place where kids grow up chasing lambs, climbing hay bales, and playing in the dirt under a big, open sky at 5 p.m, 4-year-old Gus Lamont was last seen right here, playing in a mound of sand just outside the homestead, under the watch of his grandmother, Shannon Murray. A familiar spot. A safe spot, a place he'd played countless times before. 30 minutes later, 5:30 p.m, Shannon stepped out to call him for dinner, and he was gone. No noise, no crying, no sign he'd wandered toward the dam. No indication he'd followed the sheep tracks toward the paddocks. Just gone. This is where things become so difficult for investigators, because the location itself removes almost every typical scenario seen in missing child cases. There were no passing cars on the dirt road. There were no strangers nearby. The nearest homestead sits kilometres away. There were no workers or contractors on site at the time, and no neighbours within earshot. Gus lived in one of the most secluded areas in South Australia, the kind of place where you can hear a vehicle long before you see it, and where unusual activity stands out sharply. The family members present knew the land. They knew the routines. They knew what dangers existed, and they reacted instantly. Within minutes, the search began. But from this point forward, every answer only seemed to create more questions. When Gus Lamont went missing, the clock started ticking. Every minute mattered. Authorities acted immediately, but the scope of the initial search may have been far too limited. Searchers focused on a 2-kilometre radius around Oak Park Station. In theory, this seemed reasonable. After all, the logic is that a young child wouldn't wander far from the familiar homestead. But the reality of the Australian outback, combined with Gus's natural curiosity, challenged that assumption. Ken Gamble, one of Australia's most experienced private investigators, explained that children Gus's age can travel farther than most adults anticipate, up to 7 or 8 kilometres in a few hours. That distance could easily carry him beyond the initial search perimeter, into scrub, gullies, and dunes that would hide his presence. By the time the radius was expanded, days had already passed. The delay meant footprints that might have led searchers were erased by wind. Dust storms and loose soil had obscured any tracks. Any calls for help Gus might have made could have dissipated across open terrain. One footprint matching the boots Gus was thought to be wearing was discovered, but it led nowhere, a stark reminder of how quickly clues can vanish in the outback. Experts now agree the early window of opportunity is crucial. Had the search initially covered a 7 to 8 kilometre radius, teams might have intercepted the trail or found early signs of where he went. Instead, those first hours, when visibility and physical evidence were at their peak, were constrained. And in a case where every step counts, that limitation became one of the most significant obstacles to locating Gus. The search for Gus Lamont has faced a unique and almost impossible challenge. There are simply no leads. The nearest major road, the Barrier Highway, is 30 kilometres away, a distance far too great for a stranger to have appeared unnoticed. There are no passing vehicles, no traffic cameras, no doorbell or security cameras in the remote area. In other words, there is no digital trail, no human witness, nothing to track the movements of Gus or anyone else that day. This means investigators are left to comb an enormous landscape with no points of reference. Every fence line, creek bed, and sand patch looks the same, offering no clue where the boy may have gone. Authorities deployed every tool at their disposal: police officers, air wing helicopters, state emergency service units, and even the Australian Defence Force. Searches covered land, air, and waterways. Yet no significant trace of Gus was ever discovered. Private investigators and experts warn that the absence of witnesses or cameras in such a remote area makes the case extremely difficult. Unlike urban disappearances, where even a single CCTV clip can narrow a search, the outback provides no such advantage. In essence, every theory, every line of inquiry must start from zero, and the child's location, movements, and fate remain a complete mystery in a place where the land swallows secrets effortlessly. Perhaps one of the most frustrating elements in the Gus Lamont case is the wall of silence surrounding the family. Since Gus disappeared on September 27th, parents, grandparents, and guardians have largely avoided public comment. The few interactions with media have been tense and defensive. Most notably, a grandparent confronted a journalist with a shotgun, a stark reminder of how isolated and protective the family is over their property and privacy. This silence, while not evidence of wrongdoing, creates a vacuum of information. Investigators are left to rely on search patterns, physical evidence, and sparse timelines. But without first-hand accounts from those closest to Gus, every hour of his disappearance becomes harder to reconstruct. Consider the crucial 30-minute window between the last confirmed sighting of Gus and the moment search efforts began. If even minor details from that period were clear, who checked on him last, what direction he might have been heading, any unusual activity on the property, police might be able to narrow search areas significantly. Instead, the uncertainty stretches out across the vast Oak Park station, a property so expansive that even expert search teams struggle to cover every metre effectively. Moreover, the family's low public profile and refusal to provide statements complicates the community's role. In rural regions like Yunta, neighbours and locals often contribute crucial sightings or anecdotal evidence. With family limiting visibility, these informal networks are starved of critical cues, leaving both authorities and the public with few leads. Legally, the family is entitled to privacy. But in practical terms, this means every unanswered question, every day without insight compounds the difficulty of locating Gus. From timelines to potential sightings, the lack of transparency magnifies the already formidable challenges posed by terrain, isolation, and the vast search radius required. Since the disappearance of 4-year-old Gus Lamont, authorities and experts have explored every conceivable explanation. Yet, every theory that should make sense seems to crumble under scrutiny. Let's start with wild animals. In certain regions of Australia, predators like dingoes have tragically taken children. But the area around Oak Park Station is heavily managed farmland, and wild dingoes are extremely rare. Farmers in this region shoot or remove any wild dogs immediately. Crocodiles, another common speculation, are only found in tropical northern regions, far from Gus's home. Some have suggested wild pigs, but even these would leave significant evidence of an attack: fur, blood, footprints, none of which were found. Eagles, capable of carrying small prey, simply cannot lift a child of Gus's size. The physical evidence, or lack of it, makes all of these scenarios highly improbable. Then there's the accidental wandering theory. Gus could have walked off on his own. While possible in theory, it is extraordinarily unlikely. Oak Park Station covers vast distances of open scrub, sand patches, and repeating fence lines. There are very few natural hiding spots. If a child had succumbed to the environment, search teams would likely have found remains or personal items during the days of extensive sweeps by police, Air Wing, SES, and ADF. Yet after 6 weeks, nothing has emerged. Even in extreme heat or rain, physical traces of a 4-year-old's passage typically persist, but in this case, the landscape has yielded no clues. Consider also the stranger abduction theory. The nearest major road is 30 kilometres away, which is a significant distance for a small child, and even for an adult intending to abduct him unnoticed. There is no CCTV, no traffic cameras, no neighbours passing by at the time. To reach the road, a stranger would have had to navigate a remote property entirely unobserved, which seems highly unlikely. Even with sophisticated planning, the terrain itself, long stretches of flat, open scrub, and isolated sand mounds, makes covert movement almost impossible without leaving traces. And then there are questions about the family scenario. Authorities have stated that no evidence suggests foul play by family members. Yet the family's silence, no interviews, very limited public statements, and the defence of their property with extreme caution adds another layer of difficulty for investigators. Minor but crucial details, such as Gus's routines, preferred areas to play, and possible behaviour patterns, remain unclear. Without this insight, investigators are forced to rely on physical traces, of which there are none. Experts, including private investigator Ken Gamble, have stressed that young children in remote areas are highly underestimated in their ability to move quickly, which complicates early search efforts. Yet, even considering this, all conventional explanations fail to fully account for Gus's disappearance. The wild animal theory is inconsistent with the environment. Accidental wandering does not align with the lack of evidence. Stranger abduction seems nearly impossible. Family involvement has no public proof. This leaves investigators in a unique and frustrating position. Unlike most missing child cases, where there is some physical or digital trail, footprints, clothing, witness accounts, here, Gus Lamont has left nothing behind. Not a shoe, not a piece of clothing, not a trace of DNA. Every search method, from grid-based ground sweeps to thermal drones, from waterway checks to exhaustive aerial surveys, has failed to uncover any clue. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the usual rules of search and rescue, the typical investigative assumptions, simply do not apply here. The terrain, the isolation, and the circumstances surrounding the disappearance have created a perfect storm for a case with zero physical leads. Until new evidence emerges, the reality is stark. Every conventional theory, from wandering off to wild animal attack to stranger abduction, does not fit the facts of this case. The only constant is a 4-year-old boy missing for weeks, and an outback that refuses to give up its secrets. Authorities have left no stone unturned in the search for Gus Lamont. One of the most intensive efforts focused on a dam located approximately 600 metres from the homestead. The dam, roughly 4.5 metres deep, was completely drained, 3.2 million litres of water removed, in a painstaking attempt to uncover any trace of the missing boy. Divers, ground personnel, and specialised teams combed through mud, vegetation, and hidden recesses, searching for even the smallest clue. Yet, after days of meticulous work, nothing was found. Drone surveillance has also played a critical role. Thermal imaging cameras, mounted on drones, scanned the surrounding property from every conceivable angle, including creek lines, gullies, and tree clusters. Ground teams coordinated with aerial support to create grid patterns over the land, maximising the chance of spotting heat signatures or unusual activity. Yet again, no evidence emerged from these sophisticated tools. These repeated searches are not for lack of diligence. Police have conducted multiple reviews of the operation, including peer reviews by search experts. These reviews examined whether the initial strategy, starting with a 2-kilometre radius search, was adequate, whether search teams could have missed signs, and if alternative approaches might have produced results sooner. The conclusion: while opportunities for improvement exist, There has been no criticism of the search effort itself. Each step taken was careful, methodical, and informed by expert advice, including insights on child survivability and the capacity to traverse difficult terrain. Yet, despite these extraordinary measures, the investigation has reached a point that many find hard to comprehend. The boy remains completely missing. Every day, every hour, each search grid expands only to return the same void. Every aerial sweep, every drone flight, every water operation, and every team of boots on the ground produces the same result: nothing. This relentless absence raises difficult questions. How can a 4-year-old disappear from a populated homestead without leaving a trace? How can repeated, exhaustive searches by professionals trained in the harshest terrains fail to uncover any evidence? It is a scenario so unusual that even seasoned investigators admit it defies standard expectations. In some ways, the very success of the searches in covering the area highlights the mystery. Areas that could conceal someone or something have been thoroughly combed. Dams, gullies, and sand mounds. Places where evidence might linger have been checked and double-checked. Thermal drones flying over scrubland and fence lines should, in theory, reveal heat signatures, yet no sign has been detected. Every conventional investigative method, physical searches, aerial sweeps, thermal detection, forensic analysis, has failed to uncover a single clue. And so, as weeks turn into months, the frustration grows. Investigators continue to plan incremental sweeps, reassess search patterns, and analyse aerial footage repeatedly, hoping that the next review might reveal a missed trace or a subtle anomaly. But for now, the evidence, or rather the lack of it, remains the central obstacle in solving the Gus Lamont case. Every effort, every strategy, every technological advantage is met with the same void. The dam is empty, the drones return no signals, the land gives nothing, and a community watches anxiously as a 4-year-old's fate remains unknown. The case continues, not due to oversight, but because the landscape itself refuses to cooperate. After weeks and months of exhaustive searches, the hard truth becomes unavoidable. Police still do not have answers. From the outset, several factors have combined to make this case extraordinarily difficult to solve. The first critical issue was the initial search radius. Authorities began their ground search within a 2-kilometre radius of Oak Park Station. While this might seem reasonable, child experts and private investigators have highlighted that a 4-year-old can travel much farther than expected, especially in open terrain. By the time the search expanded, critical hours had already passed, leaving an enormous area to comb with little hope of finding immediate evidence. The second factor is the harsh, unforgiving terrain of South Australia's outback. Dust, loose soil, and shifting sand erase footprints quickly. Wind and temperature extremes accelerate erosion and make tracking incredibly difficult. Even with drones, thermal cameras, and helicopters, the land itself refuses to reveal its secrets. One lone footprint matching a boot Gus may have worn is the only trace ever found, a fleeting clue in a vast landscape that has swallowed every other hint of his presence. Third, the absence of witnesses and surveillance severely limits investigative leads. The nearest road is 30 kilometres away, the property is isolated, and there are no CCTV cameras, no doorbell cameras, no passing traffic. A stranger abduction is almost impossible given the remoteness. Without eyewitness accounts or digital footprints, police are left to piece together events entirely from the property itself. Fourth, the family's limited public communication has added another layer of difficulty. While there is no evidence of family involvement, their refusal to provide interviews or public statements limits the flow of information. Even encounters with journalists have been tense. In one instance, a family member brandished a shotgun to protect the property. These interactions, while understandable, reduce transparency and leave investigators with fewer avenues to reconstruct the child's last movements. Finally, every typical theory seems to hit a dead end. Wild animals, natural accidents, or wandering off would normally leave signs, but the land, thoroughly searched, offers none. A drained dam, repeated drone flights, extensive patrols, all have returned empty-handed. Investigators have conducted multiple reviews and consulted survival experts to assess Gus's ability to move through the terrain and survive. Yet no evidence supports any conclusion. In short, the combination of a narrow initial search, harsh terrain, isolation, lack of witnesses, and the absence of physical clues has created a case that is nearly impossible to solve. Each potential lead has been exhausted, every method deployed, and yet the central question remains unanswered. Where is Gus Lamont? For now, authorities continue to monitor, search, and analyse every piece of data available. Every drone flight, every sweep of the land, and every review of prior searches is an attempt to turn absence into evidence. But until a new lead emerges, the case remains wide open, a haunting reminder of how elusive truth can be in the vast, silent outback. As the sun sets over the Yunta outback, the search for Gus Lamont continues, a relentless pursuit through empty paddocks, scrub, and sand. Weeks have passed. Months have stretched on. No footprints, no witnesses, no physical evidence, only questions, theories, and a community holding its breath for answers. The investigation has deployed every resource imaginable: ground teams, drones, helicopters, police, SES, ADF, and survival experts. Yet the terrain, isolation, and the unpredictability of a child's movements in such a vast environment have kept Gus beyond reach. Despite exhaustive efforts, the hard truth remains. This case resists resolution because the outback has swallowed the evidence, leaving authorities with nothing but a timeline, a location, and the haunting possibility of what might have happened in those critical minutes between 5 o'clock and 5:30 p.m. But the story is not over. Investigators are still watching, still analysing, and still hoping for a lead. Any lead that might finally break through the silence. And as long as that possibility exists, the search, the hope, and the questions continue. For viewers at home, your eyes and ears matter too. If you were in the Yunta area on September 27th, 2025, or saw anything unusual, your information could help. Every detail, no matter how small, might be the key. Until that evidence surfaces, the outback keeps its secrets. And Gus Lamont remains missing, a child lost in silence but not forgotten. If you've followed this investigation and want to stay updated, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and leave your thoughts below. Where were you watching from? What do you think happened to Gus Lamont? Share your theories, and stay tuned as we continue to bring you every development in this perplexing and heartbreaking case.